So let's take a look at a couple of the pre-event discussions that took place as they tried to explain to the public, prepare the public for the nauseating sight to which they were about to be exposed. And we're going to begin with a program that is on MSNBC. It is hosted by a former advisor to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Simone Sanders. She has her own MSNBC show on Saturday. And here she is speaking to Joe Biden's former White House press secretary, who now also has her own show on MSNBC. So you can see these roles are completely interchangeable. You can go and work at the White House, you can go and work for NBC News, and you don't have to change a single thing. No one notices anything that you do different because you don't do anything different. It's the same exact role. You're propagandizing the public on behalf of a Democratic president. That's what the role of NBC News is. That's what the job of all of their employees are. That's who their audience is. And so on the show with Simone Sanders, they had on Jen Psaki, who, as I said, has her own show. And Jen Psaki was being interviewed about her relationship with the press and the way in which she saw both it and the importance of this event. And listen to what it is that she said.
With the White House Correspondents Association.
You know, I will say the majority of the time they were really incredible partners, because when we were navigating COVID, even though that was some of the hardest times, it was also some of the most collaborative times. I mean, when I was the...
Okay, so just let's stop right there, because that is an extraordinary statement. Here is a person who worked for the Biden White House. Her job was to spin and deceive and disseminate propaganda on behalf of the Biden White House. And the way in which she saw journalists were not as her adversaries, not as the people around whom she had to work or against whom she had to work, but instead her very good partners, which of course is exactly what the media is. They are partners to the government, to the state. Now, obviously, there's nobody in the Trump White House who would ever call this part of the media or any part of the media other than very small segments of it partners, because they played a very different role when the Trump administration was in power. She's talking here about her role in the Biden administration and the way in which she sees the media writ large, the corporate media, and the first word she uses for them are partners. Not just partners, but very good partners. Listen to her explanation about why she sees it that way.
What was your best day with the White House Correspondents Association?
You know, I will say the majority of the time they were really incredible partners, because when we were navigating COVID, even though that was some of the hardest times, it was also some of the most collaborative times. I mean, when I was the press secretary, Zeke Miller from the Associated Press at the time was the president. Long may he reign, I used to say, even after he was no longer the president. And
okay, so that part is amazing too. So Zeke Miller is a White House reporter for the Associated Press, and he was long the president of the White House Correspondents Association, the group that sponsors this glitzy, nauseating affair at the White House. And she is so enamored of Zeke Miller, the person who's the head of the press organization. And she's talking here not as a member of the press, but as a member of the state. But again, you're seeing there's really no difference. And she's saying she was so enamored of him. He was such a dedicated partner to what she was doing. They were collaborative, she said, the opposite of adversarial, that her phrase used to be, long may he reign, long may Zeke Miller reign. You may have seen the footage of a couple of weeks ago where a reporter from Africa, who is not part of this clique, tried to question the White House and the White House press secretary before he was called on. And all of the journalists there were extremely agitated, angry with him, because it was the day that they got to see the cast of Ted Lasso, and they were incredibly excited. And this journalist wasn't interested in the cast of Ted Lasso because he's actually a journalist. He wanted to ask the Biden administration about their Africa policy. And his colleagues in the media were incredibly hostile to him. We're telling him to shut up. We're lecturing him. We're treating him like, you know, as he said, like just some kind of a black interloper is how he described it. He definitely thought there was a racist dynamic to it. But either way, they were very hostile to him. And the reason was because they're not there to ask questions about policy. They wanted to see the stars of Ted Lasso. And it was Zeke Miller, long may he reign, who on behalf of the entire press corps apologized for this journalist to the White House press secretary. This very sycophantic apology that he made to her on behalf of all journalists because there was one journalist there wanting to do his job. So this is how Jen Psaki sees the press and the person who is the leader, or has long been the leader of this organization, who reports supposedly on the White House for the Associated Press. A collaborator, a partner, someone about whom she says, long may he reign.
We had to navigate through a very difficult time in history, a time where we wanted to return access to the press, show value and respect for the media, but also do it in a way that was keeping people safe. They're also very important and valuable partners when there are foreign trips. I mean, you know this, when you're going to a war zone, you do go to the Correspondents Association and you say, hey, we're going to go to Afghanistan or Iraq or somewhere that is a challenging security place to be. I need to work with you on how we create a press pool for that.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen anything less adversarial in your life than Jen Psaki's view of the White House press corps? She regards them as what they are, her partners. It's just bizarre that she's forgetting that that's not supposed to be how it works. That's not supposed to actually be what their function is. That's not what they pretend it is. But for some reason, I think probably because she was speaking with her current colleague and her prior colleague at the White House, they forgot that there's cameras on and that there's a fraud that's supposed to be maintained about the relationship between the White House and the media. They're not supposed to be described publicly as partners, collaborators, friends, people with whom you work on towards the same aim, but that is the reality, and that's why this clip was so revealing. Now, thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.